Now let's go over this quiz together. Number 6. Colleagues describe Paget as both forthright and reticent, humble and good-natured and blank. And in her behavior as a businesswoman, Paget herself does little to blank these contradictions. She says she is pro-employee but is avowedly anti-union. She calls herself pro-customer but acknowledges that she runs a store with higher profit margins and prices than almost any other grocer. What does the sentence mean? Let's restate it in our own words. And what the sentence is saying is that we have a woman here who is a mass of contradictions, and that's our key word. She's a mass of contradictions. She does not follow one thing or one ideal. She's a mass of contradictions. So that's what you want to look for, are the contradictions in the sentence. So we read that she is forthright and reticent. That's her first contradiction, meaning that she is straightforward and yet also very shy. Okay? We read that she is humble and something else. Well, what's the opposite of humble? And that's what you want to look for in that first blank. You go to the first blank, you realize that diffident means to be shy, so that wouldn't work. Eccentric means to be strange, odd, quirky, as we learned before. Arrogant would be the opposite. So diffident wouldn't work, eccentric wouldn't work, but arrogant. So she's humble and arrogant. Those are opposites. And in her behavior as a businesswoman, Paget herself does little to blank these contradictions. Okay? So what happens in that second blank? Well, actually, that's the third blank. Let's go back to the second blank. She's humble. The first blank says humble and arrogant. Okay, we've got that. Good-natured and blank. So we need the opposite now of good-natured. And let's take a look at these. Prickly means that you're very hard to get along with. Solicitous means that you are anxious and overly concerned about someone else's health or their well-being. Phlegmatic means that you are really disposed to being calm and silent. You're unemotional. You're sluggish, right? So if you're phlegmatic, that's what it means. And it comes from that horrible word phlegm, which runs through your nose ever so slowly. So if you're phlegmatic, you're someone that's just not disposed to rushing. You're quiet. You're basically unemotional. So it says that she does little, that she's good-natured and blank. So the opposite of good-natured would be not solicitous, because that means good-natured. Phlegmatic is wouldn't fit there, but prickly, hard to get along with. That's the opposite of being good-natured. And in her behavior as a businesswoman, Paget herself does little to blank these contradictions, and or to put away these contradictions would be a better way of saying that. Well, accentuate means to emphasize, so that wouldn't fit. Fulfill means to actually bring forward, that wouldn't fit. Dispel means to push away, and that would fit. So the answer here would be the word dispelled. To dispel means to drive away, as it were, or to put something to rest. I've dispelled any doubts about my commitment to my diet. I'm not going to eat except for one meal a day. To dispel, to push things away. So the answer here would be arrogant, would be C, D, prickly, and G, dispel. Our next problem is 7. Historical research makes two somewhat antithetical truths that sounded blank come to seem profound. Knowledge of the past comes entirely from written documents, giving written words great blank, and the more material you uncover, the more blank your subject becomes. This is a very good, very difficult problem. Let's take a look at it and break it down. Now, the first thing we want to do is to discuss it. What does it mean? Restate it in our own words. So historical research makes two somewhat antithetical truths, and I want to just deal with the term antithetical first. And antithetical or antithetical refers to something that is against something else. Anti, against. So if a truth is antithetical or antithetical to another, it is the contrast or contradiction of it. Okay? So this sentence is saying that when you do research, that research can take two antithetical truths. They're somewhat in contradiction to each other. And these truths sound so plain, but it makes them seem profound, the opposite of that. So I would put plain in that first blank. Antithetical truths that sounded plain or basic come to seem deep and profound. See, and then here's my colon now, which tells me that what comes after this mark here will give me an idea of what comes before. It will explain it properly to me. So knowledge of the past comes in. So here's the first truth. Knowledge of the past comes entirely from written documents, giving great words great blank. So since our knowledge of the past comes from written documents, written words will have great importance. So I would put importance there. And then the more material you, but then here's a second truth that's opposite or seemingly antithetical or contradictory to the first statement. The first statement says when you do historical research, you find all these written documents and written words have great importance. But the second truth that is somewhat contradictory says, and the more material you uncover, the more blank your subject becomes. And I would say harder to find or harder to pin down or harder to describe. So you have a lot of material, you attach a great importance to that material, but you know what? When it comes down to it, the more material you uncover, the harder it is to really understand your subject. And that's how I would frame that out. So let's take a look now at our choices. Historical research makes two somewhat antithetical truths that sounded deep come to seem profound? No, because deep and profound are synonyms, so that wouldn't match. Portentous is also very similar to profound. Portentous meaning having great meaning. But banal means commonplace, and that would be correct for us. Banal. So historical research makes these truths that sounded banal come to seem profound. If something is banal, it is ordinary, it is commonplace, it is trite, it is hackneyed, right? But now they seem profound. Now, what are these two truths? Well, one, that written words show great simultaneity or simultaneity. No, that means something happening together. That's not what it says there. Written words, giving written words great what? Antiquity? No, we know they're old, but giving them great consequence or importance or meaning. And finally, the more material you uncover, here comes a contradictory statement, the more elusive your enemy becomes. Why do I choose elusive? Because these don't work. Circumstantial, let me eliminate that. Circumstantial means particular, defined, clearly defined. Contemporary means present time. And this statement is not about how historical research makes things become contemporary or puts them in our frame or historical reference. No, historical time period. No, it's about being elusive, hard to find. If something is elusive or someone is elusive, they keep getting away. They're hard to catch. And so our subject that we're studying becomes more elusive. The understanding of that subject becomes harder to pin down or to really gain. It becomes elusive. Why? That's just a contradictory truth. The more you learn about the subject, the harder it is to really know or uncover the person. And so your answer would be banal, C, D, consequence, and G, elusive. Problem 8. The recent publication of the painter Robert Motherwell's substantial body of writing, as well as writings by fellow expressionist Barnett Newman, Blank and Gibson's assertion that the abstract expressionists were reluctant to blank issues of artistic meaning in their work, and suggests that this supposed reticence was perhaps more artistic, blank, than historical fact. So I'm going to restate this in my own words now, that this is all about Anne Gibson's point, her assertion. And what was her assertion? Her assertion was that a certain group of artists called abstract expressionists were reluctant, were not willing to blank issues of artistic meaning in their work. That they were not willing maybe to show or to reveal or to display issues of artistic meaning in their work, and suggests that this supposed reticence, and then it says it's going to question this theory, this what's called this supposed reticence, or this shyness that they had about what they did in their work. So basically, this passage, this group of sentences, this long sentence rather, this group of clauses, is about these artists and people's theories about why they showed or didn't show certain types of expressions in their art. And that's what it's all about. But let's kind of narrow in here, zero in, and try to get the answers. So when I look at the first blank, I'm going to fill in the fact that Anne Gibson's assertion is now being replaced because, you see, my clue is here where it says this supposed reticence. She made this theory that the abstract expressionists were reluctant to maybe display issues of artistic meaning in their work. But this new work, this recent publication, says that that's supposed. That may not be true. So I would say it undermines her suggestion, doesn't substantiate it, and doesn't overlook it. Okay? It undermines Anne Gibson's assertion that the abstract expressionists were reluctant to display or articulate, forego wouldn't work here, neither would conceal, issues of artistic meaning in their work, and suggests that this supposed reticence was perhaps more artistic, not focus, not conscience, but posturing. They were kind of playing with their audience when they intimated that they didn't want to really articulate any meaning in their work. So in other words, Anne Gibson's assertion has been undermined or proven incorrect by a recent publication. The answer would be B, undermine, E, articulate, and finally I, posturing.